In 395 CE, Emperor Theodosius I formally divided the Roman Empire into two administrative halves, fracturing the Mediterranean world between Italy and Greece. By 476 CE, the western capital of Rome collapsed to the Germanic chieftain Odoacer. The eastern half, governed from Constantinople, survived for nearly another 1,000 years. This geopolitical rupture forced the surviving eastern state, what historians now call the Byzantine Empire, to invent a new vocabulary of structural engineering to assert its authority. To understand their departure, we have to look at the baselines they inherited. Classical Greek architecture prioritized exterior mathematical harmony. Builders used a simple post and lintel system, stacking horizontal beams directly on vertical columns, which resulted in dark, highly restricted interior rooms. The Romans bypassed this limitation by mastering concrete and the semicircular arch. By interlocking arches into vaults, they shifted the architectural focus inward, engineering massive civic halls designed to enclose hundreds of citizens. The Byzantines inherited this Roman emphasis on the interior, but they rejected its geometry. Instead of a horizontal march from the door to the altar, they re-engineered the spatial axis to draw the eye vertically upward. Sustaining a new millennium-long empire required new borders. It also demanded an entirely new structural vocabulary to physically manifest its shifting ideological priorities. Before the Byzantines centralized their space, early Christian builders relied on the Roman basilica blueprint. This diagram shows the floor plan of Old St. Peter's Basilica, a longitudinal layout built around a central rectangular nave flanked by side aisles. Entering the narthex, worshippers are forced into a linear progression down the axis, terminating at the eastern apse. Gravity presents the primary structural limitation for this layout. Spanning a massive rectangular nave required a heavy timber truss roof. To prevent the roof from crashing down, builders had to construct thick, continuous stone or brick walls running the entire length of the building. These load-bearing walls had to be dense and solid, severely limiting the placement of windows. The Roman basilica excels at directing a crowd linearly, but its reliance on heavy, continuous masonry severely constrains both spatial volume and natural light. In 537 CE, Emperor Justinian commissioned a building in Constantinople that replaced this linear tradition with a centralized volume, Hagia Sophia. This diagram shows Hagia Sophia's centralized floor plan. It forms a symmetrical square base, where the main hall and crossing arm intersect into a massive central bay. Traditional elements remain. The narthex and aisles wrap around to buttress this central mass. When a worshipper steps into this centralized void, there is no long corridor to walk down. The geometry instantly forces the eye upward toward the void overhead. Setting a massive 31-meter circular dome over a huge interior space creates an immediate engineering paradox. How do you safely place a circular rim onto a strictly square room? Previous Roman engineers, like those who built the Pantheon, solved this by resting the dome entirely on a thick, continuous circular drum wall. A circular drum, however, prevents the room below from expanding out into a square. Pushing a centralized space outward into a square meant the dome could no longer rest on continuous walls. This crisis required a completely new mechanism for bearing weight. The Byzantine solution to this structural dead end was the pendentive. A pendentive is a concave, triangular section of a sphere. 4 of these curved triangles bridge the corners of a square room, forming a flush, circular base. They act as funnels, intercepting the dome's massive thrust and driving it strictly into isolated corner piers. This diagram shows the exterior of Hagia Sophia. To prevent the lateral, or sideways, forces of the central dome from bursting the structure apart, engineers added a secondary support system of massive semi-domes. These half-spheres flank the east and west sides of the building, acting as giant bracing vaults, pushing back against the outward pressure of the main dome. Since the roof load is gathered by the pendentives and driven strictly into 4 massive pillars, the flat walls between them carry no weight. By isolating the load into discrete points, Byzantine engineers decoupled the walls from holding up the building, creating a vast, unencumbered spatial volume. The immediate result of the pendentive system is that the masonry directly below the dome becomes structurally obsolete. This diagram highlights the base of the central dome. Because the pendentives handle the load, architects could safely pierce the lower rim of the dome with dozens of voids. From the interior, these 40 windows create a stunning optical illusion. The 31-meter dome appears entirely disconnected from the masonry, floating solely on a continuous ring of light. This intense light served a specific programmatic function. It illuminated the vast interior surfaces that were now available for sacred mosaic art. Following a period of religious prohibition on images, known as iconoclasm, elaborate figurative mosaics filled these spaces. The Diesis mosaic, located in the upper gallery, depicts Christ flanked by the Virgin Mary and John the Baptist. Byzantine artisans executed these works by embedding millions of small gold glass blocks, called tesserae, into the wet plaster. Instead of laying them flat, they set them at slight, irregular angles. When the shifting light from the window arcades hit these uneven glass surfaces, it created a shimmering effect. As a viewer moved, or as candlelight flickered, the static figures appeared to breathe and animate. Byzantine architects solved a rigid mathematical problem regarding weight distribution. In doing so, they constructed an environment where precise structural mechanics manufactured a distinctly divine atmosphere.